Hey everyone, welcome back to the video, and this is where we left yesterday. So we had created controllers and all that, and that are working pretty much normally. So now since we have controllers, I also want to show you like how we can create middlewares and these middlewares and how they will be injected into our code and like how they will be working all in all. So let's try to create a middleware called restrict2. I won't be creating the entire functionality, but I'll be showing you how you can create middlewares that can actually take arguments and can also do the task that you want to do. Okay, so that won't be too complicated, by the way. So in the source folder, I'm going to create a new folder actually, and it's going to be middlewares. And right here, I'll create a new file and let's call it restrict. This middleware is generally used to like restrict one particular route to one particular type of user, for example, like say admin or a user, a content manager, something like that. So I'll call it middleware.ts, and let's try to create this middleware. So first I'm gonna import a few things, and so rather I don't have to import it one by one. So it's gonna be request, since we'll be having that. Then we need response and we need next function. These are all going to come from Express. Now let's create a function, call it restrict2, and this actually takes in a role. So it's going to be roles, and this is going to be of type string, by the way, right now, but we'll be moving it to something better, and we're going to implicitly return something out of this, and this is going to be request. Now if you don't know, we generally prefix the variables that we are not going to be using in TypeScript by this underscore syntax, so TypeScript knows that this variable is not going to be used, but it is required. Then we use res. However, if you want to use them, just simply get rid of the underscore. Then we need next, and this is going to be of type next function. So let's fire that up, save it. So it's going to be coming down, and we'll just do this. So let's export this by default, by the way. So export default restrict2. So let me tell you what goes on. Generally, this middleware will be attached to one of our routes. So for example, I can attach this middleware right here, because remember our handler, so if I go to the handler decorator.ts, actually takes in middlewares as well. So the path we're passing and actually takes in the middleware as well. However, when this decorator is actually fired, so if you see here, so in the bootstrapper.ts file, you see that in case we have middlewares, generally they will be attached to the router as well. So all in all, it looks something like this. So this is going to be like app.use, which is generally like how we do. Then we pass in the route that we want to handle, let's say API/users, and then it's going to be a middleware here, and then finally the handler. However, the best part about this is that you can pass in as many middleware as you want. So I can say like in a spread over, because we can pass in as many middlewares as possible. So let's try that out. So let's go back to the restrict2 middleware, and just for the sake of it, let's try logging it. So I'm going to say logger.info, and it's going to be roles. So that's going to take the care of the roles, and let's try to use this. So if I go back to user controller, so let's try and importing that middleware that we have, and let's call it, what did we export, by the way? Yeah, restrict2, that one. And right here in the get user by ID, I'm going to pass in that middleware right here. So remember, this is going to be an array. We don't have to pass in like this. This is going to be wrong. We need to unwrap that within an array, and remember that this middleware actually takes in roles. So let's say users. So it's going to restrict it to a user. So let's go back. Maybe not go back, but just simply open up your browser, and let's try heading into that. So if I go to, let's just try in 5000/API/users, which is the normal API, by the way, so this won't log anything. However, let's try passing in an ID. So let's say test user. If I do that, you can see that I'm getting that route object since I think I didn't got rid of that logger itself. Let me get rid of it. So right here, it's going to be request.params.id, so that I get the route as well. And yeah, that should do the work. So if I go back, if I refresh, you see test user route, because this is where the params are coming in. But if I go back, you will see that we're logging in the user. So by the way, where this user log is coming from, it's actually coming from here. So remember, the roles were logged. So if I do like this, roles passed, So it's gonna be, and now if you see, if I refresh that, go back, you'll say roles passed user. Now this is where actually your logic comes in. For example, if you want to create a logic for restricting this route to the user, that's where the logic is originally going to come in, and that's how you're going to pass in that logic as well. Remember, the next function is a must to call, because if you don't do that, it's not going to just completely move the logic to the next thing that is in another line of the execution context. So that does the job, and that is how you create middlewares. So now you can plug this middleware literally anywhere by simply just doing a restrict to and passing an ID. For example, let's say that this is restricted to admins, just admin should do, and then this route will be restricted to admin. However, yeah, this is like completely foolish right now, because since this isn't going to work, make sure that you actually create a logic for it. So if I refresh here, you're going to still see that we're logging in. We're not logging in anything, since I think I got rid of that. But yeah, this is how we generally do. All right, so let's try making this thing a bit more better. So inside of source folder, I'm going to create a new folder, and let's call it enums. And inside of it, I'm going to create a new enum, and that should be, let's just say, what should I call it? Roles, or let's say user roles dot enum dot ts. So I'm going to say enum, and let's call it user roles, and this is going to be, first role that we have is of course the user. So let's call it user. You can paste it anything like this. I prefer like keeping it lowercase, because that is how databases are done. So it's completely up to you, by the way. And I'm going to do a admin. Let's just save it and try to export this. So I'll say export default user roles. All right, now let's go back here, and so instead where we are trying to pass an admin like this, let's pass in that enum as well. So let's just say import user roles from that enum, and right here, instead of passing an admin, I'm going to say user roles dot admin, and right here where we're passing in user, let's restrict that to user roles dot user. Now the best part about this is that we can actually handle this. So if I go back to the restrict to middleware, which I have namely done a bit mistake naming it restrict to, so it's going to save that as well. So right here we're talking in string. We don't have to use that as a string anymore, since we have the particular thing for that, and it's going to be user roles. So if I go back and try to make it something else, for example, if I try to make it a mere string, so it's going to be like user, you're going to see that it's going to throw an error for us, and it says that user not assignable to parameter like user roles. So all in all, even if it is the same, it still won't work. We need to make sure that we're using the enum only. So user roles dot user, and that is where the entire application should run pretty much perfectly. So if I go back, just user, you can see everything works perfectly fine, no errors and nothing else like that. Now in the next upcoming video, which is going to be pretty much last for this series of creating this API, it is not like super complicated API, but we will be initializing a database for this. We'll be using Postgres, and we're going to be using an ORM called Prisma. I think most of you all have already heard of it, but yeah, that is what we have next on the agenda for us.